Ancient Earth Stories. Uncovering legends etched in stone.
Have you ever stood where the land seems older than time, where the wind does not whisper, but remembers? Have you heard the silence between two breaths, the deep hush where the ancestors wait? Have you ever walked where no path lies, and yet your feet seem to know the way? Some say the earth is still dreaming, that the hills are the bodies of sleeping spirits, and the rivers are their sighs. It is said that the world was once soft, clay beneath the fingers of something more ancient than sky. You, dear listener, are part of that story. You always have been. We love you. We're grateful you're here. Your heart, your breath, they matter to this story. Before we begin the story, tell us, where in the world are you watching from and what time is it there? Now grab your coffee and let's get started. Before time had a name, before maps and clocks and footsteps carved the world into meaning, there was only silence. But not a silence that was empty. It was the kind of silence that breathes, that listens, that holds memory beneath its skin, and beneath that silence, the earth was not hard. Not yet. It was soft, like warm flesh, like the underbelly of a sleeping beast. Everything was unformed, sky folded into sea, and the ground was not yet taught to carry weight. Trees were thoughts, not trunks. Stones were unborn. Shadows did not yet know how to follow light. And deep within this formless world curled the first being, coiled, immense, rainbow-veined, and ancient beyond naming, Ungud, the rainbow serpent. Not a snake, not a god, something older than either. A dreamtime being whose body was as long as memory and whose breath carved valleys. Ungud stirred beneath the surface of the soft earth, his movement a slow pulse. Where he moved, the ground rose. Where he rested, lakes formed in the curve of his spine. And when he opened his mouth, colour spilled into the grey sky. Blues that shimmered like wet stone, reds that tasted of ochre and heat. They say Ungud did not speak in words, but in shape. Every bend in the river, every ripple in the sand, every sudden hill, these were his thoughts, made permanent. And in the hush of those first dawns, he dreamt of others. He dreamed of beings made from bark and firelight, from bird call and dust. He dreamt them into the hills, into the grass, into the sky that still did not know what stars were. His dreaming was not gentle. It rolled through the land like thunder without sound. Out of his dreaming came the first fires, and the first trees, and the first sorrow. For even the great rainbow serpent, wrapped in the breath of the world, knew that all things must rise and fall, that the hills he formed would one day crumble, that even rivers forget their courses when the land shifts. So he gave the people, still unborn, still whispers in the red clay, a gift, a map made of memory, a path etched in story, a trail they could follow, not with their feet, but with their voices. A song line. Have you ever heard a song carry a mountain? Have you known a tune that can open a cave? That is what he left behind. Not tools, not weapons, but stories shaped like geography. Songs woven with names too old to translate. Each verse a landmark, each chorus a direction. It is said that Ungud moved across the land, curling his way from the coasts to the heart of the continent, and as he went, he sang, and in his singing he sculpted. The red ridges that rise like shark fins from the desert, his ribs, the long stretches of water, dark and still, his sleeping breath, and the wind that sometimes carries voices not your own. That, too, is him, but not all was stillness. For in the warmth of the soft earth came others, beings of claw and wing. Some rose from Ungud's dreams. Others crept in from beyond, tricksters, shapers, keepers of thunder. They made camps. They built the bones of time. They whispered rules, but Ungud, he remained beneath, watching, feeling, dreaming. One day, a spirit child newly formed from starlight and mist walked across the wet clay of the world. Her feet sank into the earth, and where she stepped, grass grew. She did not know who she was, only that she was being watched. She paused at a small pool, shallow and warm, and saw her reflection ripple. But behind it shimmered scales, a great eye, a coil of something vast. She asked aloud, "What are you?" And from the pool a thought replied, not in sound, but in silence. "I am your beginning." The girl felt the earth breathe beneath her feet. She sang a note, soft, questioning. The pool echoed it. A bird took flight, and then she understood. Song was not for music. It was for remembering. It was how the land kept itself from forgetting its own skin. That night, she slept in a hollow carved by Ungud's shoulder. She dreamt of rivers that remembered her name. In the morning, she walked east, and each step left behind a verse. And so the people came, not all at once, but slowly, gently, as smoke rises. They emerged from rocks, from fire pits, from trees struck by lightning. Each mob held their own, dreaming, their own part of Ungud's long and winding song. And they walked. Some followed fire trails that curved like questions. Others climbed stones where spirits once sat. And always, always they sang. Songs of water, songs of wallaby, songs that warned of places not to tread, songs that told the stars where to rise. Time, then, was not counted. It was remembered. And the land, the very soil, the cliffs, the air, held the memory close. Have you ever touched stone so warm it seemed to hum? That is where the rainbow's serpent still sleeps. They say when the ground trembles, not with fear, but with remembering. It is Ungud turning slightly in his dream. They say that when rains fall softly, it is his breath rising from the deep. But beware the cracking of dry land, for if Ungud stirs too much, rivers overflow and mountains weep. The old ones tell of a time when the serpent rose too far, chasing a shadow that had no name. In his wake, the rivers reversed, and the birds lost their songs. It was only when the people sang together, thousands of voices in unison, across plain and dune, that he returned to sleep. And even now, if you listen carefully to the wind in the early hours, you might hear his exhale, or perhaps it is only your own breath, slowed by memory. The land is not silent. It speaks in echoes, in shapes, in color. In heat, it remembers you because you were there once, when the earth was soft. And though the world has hardened, though roads have replaced songlines and names have forgotten their meanings, Ungud still dreams. And in his dreaming, he waits, but deep in the red sands there lies a tale of flame. It begins with a question that cannot be answered by words alone. Have you ever looked at the moon and felt its silence like a drumbeat beneath your ribs? Have you seen the way it floats? Silver? Still she as if it remembers a time before warmth. Have you wondered why the night feels colder than memory? They say there was once a time when fire did not walk the earth. No ember glowed in the hearth. No smoke curled from stone. The cold came and stayed, settling in bone and bark alike, and yet, in the beginning, no one missed it, because they did not yet know what warmth was, and without warmth there was no shadow, only lightless night, and the waiting silence between breaths. The people lived by starlight and the glow of their stories. They hunted by the silver glint of the moon and cooked with patience, not flame. They wore furs soaked in river mist, and their songs shivered in the wind like frost. But somewhere, far above, in a place the elders called Wurulanga, fire lived. It lived inside the moon. Tucked deep behind its glowing skin, fire pulsed like a secret heartbeat. No one on earth could see it, but some could feel it. Late at night, children would curl beneath bark shelters and dream of red-gold light. They would wake with warmth pressed to their chests, only to find the air still cold, the world unchanged. One child, a girl with hair like char and eyes like stormwater, dreamt differently. She dreamt in colours no one else could see. Yorindi, that was her name. It meant sky echo in the tongue of her people. Yorindi was born under a silent eclipse when the moon wore a shadow like a cloak. The elders said she was marked by it, that her spirit came from above, not below, and so she spent her childhood watching the sky, listening for stories in the clouds, singing to the stars. One day, as she sat alone near a waterhole, she felt the wind change. It did not blow across her skin. It moved through her bones. It said, not in words, but in feeling, "Climb." She did not ask where. She only stood and began to walk. She walked until the red earth gave way to scrub, and scrub to stone, and stone to silence. Then, far in the distance, she saw it, a tall, dead tree, leafless and bone-pale, reaching higher than any she had seen. It was not the tallest tree in the world, but it remembered the tallest one had been. She placed her hand upon its bark. It was warm. She began to climb, and as she rose, the stars blinked in recognition. The sky opened like a mouth of song. Each step carried her higher, until the air grew thin, and the wind spoke again. Higher still, it breathed. Yorindi did not stop. When her fingers touched the highest branch, the moon paused in its path. It hung above her like a great eye, unblinking.
"Ancient," she whispered. "I know your secret." The moon said nothing, but it shimmered.
And in that shimmer, Yorindi saw the truth. Inside the moon was a being, not a spirit like Ungud nor a creature of bark and smoke, but something lit from within, made of flame and time, the Moonkeeper. He guarded the fire meant for creation, a fire too wild for early hands, a fire that sang in tongues older than wind. But Yorindi was not afraid. She was not a thief, not yet. She only wanted to feel warm, to bring warmth to her people, to give the night a softer edge, so she sang, not loudly,
Not in demand.
but like water winding through stone. Her voice curled through the branches.
Into the wind, up to the moon's pale.
Here, she sang of her people's frost-bitten
Mornings she sang of the breath that turned to
ice. She sang of the bones that cracked beneath the cold, and the Moonkeeper listened. He had never known sorrow.
only duty. Now he felt his fire tremble, but fire is not easily moved. It does not give itself.
It must be asked, and even then it tests the hand that reaches for it. So the Moonkeeper did not grant her wish, but he opened a single ember and let it fall, slowly, silently, like a tear. It landed in Yorindi's outstretched palm. It did not burn her. Instead it whispered, a language of heat.
Of dance, of transformation. She climbed down with the ember cupped in her hand. It glowed faintly, like a breath held too long. When her feet touched the ground again, the air around her changed. Birds sang deeper.
Leaves curled in recognition. The world tilted slightly toward warmth. She knelt beside a piece of bark and let the ember rest inside it. She breathed gently. The ember answered. It rose, unfurled, and became flame. Red, orange, gold. The colors she had dreamed of. The colors no one else had seen. Fire had come to the earth. At first, it was a curiosity. People gathered near, their faces lit from below. They stretched out trembling fingers,
laughed when it crackled,
watched it flicker like a spirit made visible. Then came understanding. It could warm, it could cook, it could protect, but it could also consume. One night, a boy threw a branch too dry. The flame leapt too high. It licked the grass. The wind fed it, the fire ran, it screamed, it devoured. Trees fell.
Animals fled.
Smoke covered the stars, and the people wept, for they feared they had unleashed something they could not contain. But Yarindi stepped forward. She spoke not to the people, but to the flame. "You are not here to destroy," she said. "You are here to teach." And fire listened. From that night on, they learned its ways, its hunger,
its breath,
its sorrow. They learned to carry it in bark bowls and seed husks, to feed it slowly, to honor its need for rest, and in return, fire warmed their old bones, lit their sacred dances, whispered through the hollow logs of their music. They say that Yarindi became the flame sister, a spirit who walks the land still, her footsteps leaving warmth behind. Sometimes, on cold desert nights, a single spark appears without warning, in a cave, near a river, beneath a stone, and always it is just enough to start a fire. They say that is Yarindi giving once more, and the moon, it never took the fire back, but it watches, even now, and once a month it covers itself again, as if to remember the moment its secret was shared. So when you see a full moon glowing like an old scar made silver, know this, it remembers the girl who stole fire, and the fire remembers her, too, and yet the firelight casts shadows.
And one of them walks the skies still.
Have you ever looked up at the night sky and felt it wasn't empty at all? Have you seen the stars not as dots of light, but as fires, small, flickering, patient, lit by those who came before? Have you wondered what travels between those stars? What paths cross above us that cannot be seen by eyes alone? It is said the sky is not only a roof, it is a river, and where there is river, there are canoes. In the time when the stories still walked barefoot across the land, and the world was held together by breath and bone, there came the tale of the Sky Canoe, and the boy who learned that spirits do not only rise, they also return. Long ago, in a place where the trees touched the clouds and the earth gave birth to fog each morning, there lived a boy named Murki. His name meant bark that bends but does not break. He was small, quiet, and strange-eyed, a watcher, not a speaker. While other children played in the river or chased lizards through the tall grass, Murki climbed. He climbed trees older than names. He climbed to listen. The elders said he had tree ears, meaning he could hear the stories that lived in branches, for in this place trees were not silent. They hummed with voices too slow for most to catch. They carried dreams from the roots up into the leaves, and sometimes those dreams dropped like fruit, waiting for someone to hold them. One night, as the sun slipped beneath the edge of the world, and the stars began to blink awake, Muraki sat high in a tree that no one dared name. It was too tall, too old, too full of ghosts. But Muraki was not afraid. He sat in the crook of a branch and looked up. The sky was velvet, deep, endless, but not empty. He saw something moving. At first, he thought it was cloud, but clouds do not glide so smoothly.
Do not carry stillness like that. It was a canoe, dark, silent, moving among the stars. Inside sat three figures cloaked in dusk.
One held a spear made of light. One held a bundle of smoke. The last held nothing at all, only memory. The canoe drifted above, and Muraki felt something stir in his chest. Grief, though he did not know what he had lost. He climbed down before dawn and told the elders. One of them, an old woman with eyes like cracked bark and a voice like wind, nodded slowly. "You have seen the Warin," she said, "the spirit canoe." She sat him by the fire and whispered, "When the body dies, the spirit does not walk."
It sails. The canoe comes only for those whose name is ready, Muraki asked. What is a ready name?
She answered, "A name that has completed its breath." He did not understand, but he remembered. That night, he dreamed of the same canoe, only this time it stopped, and one of the spirits looked at him, not with eyes, but with time. It said, not in sound but in warmth, "You do not belong in the sky." Yet, the next morning, the tree he had climbed was gone, not fallen, not burned, gone as if it had sailed away in silence. Muraki grew, and the dreams did not stop. He saw canoes passing through clouds. He heard oars made of wind dipping through stars. He saw spirit fires flickering in the sky, mapping journeys far beyond the dust of the world. Then one day he saw his mother in a canoe. She had passed seasons ago, but now she sat straight-backed, eyes forward, holding a bowl of ochre. He called out to her. She did not answer, but she turned, and in her gaze was no sorrow, only knowing. When he awoke, the trees around his shelter had shed their leaves in perfect circles, like canoes drawn in bark. He went to the old woman again. "I saw her," he said. "She sailed true," the woman replied. That night, Muraki sat by the fire and carved a canoe from a fallen branch. He painted its sides with white clay and black ash. Inside he placed a feather and a stone, symbols of rising and returning. He did not plan to use it, but the act was part of the song, and song, in this land, is what keeps the sky moving. Have you ever sung without sound? It is said that some trees are ladders, not just to the sky, but to the place between, where dreams become shape, where time folds. In one such tree, Muraki climbed again, older now, quiet as dusk. At the top he found no stars, only mist, and in the mist, voices, soft, layered, like water, speaking backwards. He stepped forward and did not fall. He found himself on a vast plain of sky. Below him, the world turned.
Rivers flashed.
Fires glowed. Storms rolled. Above him, canoes crossed in every direction. He was in the middle sky, the space between breath and forgetting. A spirit approached him. It wore no face. It carried no name. Yet Muraki knew it. It was the first tree he had climbed. Now spirit-shaped, it placed a hand upon his chest and asked, "Will you carry stories back?" He nodded and woke beneath his tree. From that day, Muraki became a teller, a weaver of sky paths. He would point to constellations and name them not as stars, but as camps. That is where my father sharpened spears. That is where the dingo spirit waits. That is the place where canoe wood grows. People listened, And as they listened,
They saw the stars differently, not
distant but near, not burning but remembering, they began to bury their dead with canoes carved in ash upon the ground. They painted trees with stripes that pointed skyward, and they sang at night, low, long songs that drifted like sails into the dark. It is said that even now, when someone passes, their name echoes upward. The canoe arrives, shaped not in wood, but in wind. And if you are very still, if you lie beneath a tree older than your own memory, you may feel its passing, a hush, a ripple, a faint scent of bark smoke, and sometimes you may see it, just for a moment, the dark shape against the stars, gliding with purpose. That is no cloud, that is a soul remembering where it came from. And the trees, they still whisper. They remember every canoe that ever passed above, every name sung, every spirit sent on its way. So if you feel the wind in a tree press close to your ear, do not turn away. It may be your own story,
calling back to you, but not all spirits rise. Some return.
Have you ever listened to the call of a bird and felt something older stir in your chest? Have you stood in a forest and heard the rhythm of footsteps not your own? Not all creatures came from birth. Some were sung, and some still carry that song in their bones. It is said the land was not always full of life. In the earliest hush, after Ungud carved the rivers, after the fire slipped from the moon, and before the canoes had yet begun their silent crossings, there was sound, not loud, not chaotic, but steady, rhythmic, ancient. It came not from mouth or drum, but from breath that shaped the world, a
single being walked alone in that vastness there.
Dream singer, no one remembers what shape he took. Some say he was tall as a hill and wore the sky across his shoulders. Some say he was small as a seed and invisible in daylight, but all agree, wherever he stepped, he sang, and wherever he sang, something became. He did not plan, did not draw, did not build. He wandered, and the land unfurled behind him. First came the kangaroo, bounding from the rhythm of his feet, its legs curled from the beat of his heels, its ears from the hush of his pauses. Then the emu, born of a deep hum that echoed across the plain, its feathers scattered from his breath like ash from an old fire. He sang the snake in a descending tune, each note a coil, each silence a turn beneath the sand. He sang the kookaburra with laughter in his voice, and the bird carried that joy into every dawn. He sang the turtle from a whisper in his throat. The shell was his resting silence, the slow movement, his thoughtful breath, and so it went. With every phrase, another being appeared, shaped not from clay or light, but from sound remembered before the world had form. They say he walked in wide circles, never returning to the same path, never repeating a creature twice. Each track was a verse, each verse a life. The animals followed him, not as pets, not as worshippers, but as kin. He was their beginning, and they were his echoes. But as he walked, a question rose, slow and soft like mist. What happens when the song ends? He felt it one day, beneath a blood-red dawn. He had sung the dingo from the sharp click of his tongue. It had followed him closely, eyes alert, pause silent. But on this morning, it turned away, it ran toward the horizon, and did not look back. The dream singer paused. He opened his mouth to call it back, but no sound came. His voice,
once vast and endless, faltered. The air did not carry his tune.
It swallowed it. He tried again, softer, and a small creature appeared. A bandicoot, trembling, born from the tremor of his sorrow. He sat down for the first time. The ground did not remember his weight. The animals gathered. Slowly, carefully, they sensed the quiet.
The wrong kind of quiet?
The end of song kind. The dream singer closed his eyes. He listened, but heard nothing. His songs were gone. But then, something changed. From nearby came a sound.
High, uncertain, but familiar. It was the call of the curlew. It echoed across the rocks. And another.
The croak of the frog, and another, the drumming of a kangaroo's.
Feet against dry earth. The beings he had
sung into the world had begun to sing, not as he did, not creation, but continuation. They imitated, adapted, layered his tones into their own languages. The magpie wove morning songs. The lyrebird stole and stitched sound into mimicry. The cicadas screamed in unison at dusk. Even the ants marched to a silent rhythm that beat in the ground. And then the humans, still new, still uncertain, began to hum. Their voices carried fragments of the dream singer's first melodies. They sang the dingo's gait, the goanna's watchfulness, the echidna's patience. Each tribe, each place, had its own echoes. Their songs were not always the same, but they remembered. And memory, too, is a kind of singing. The dream singer opened his eyes. He did not speak. He smiled. Then he stood and walked away, into the high sun, into the soft horizon, into a silence that did not forget. He was never seen again, but he was always heard. It is said that in the stillest corners of the bush, just after the rain, or just before dawn, you can hear a tune not made by wind or wing, a rhythm older than survival, the soft beginning of becoming. And in that moment, you are reminded, you too were sung, not born from flesh alone, but called into the world by breath, your hands, your walk, the way your voice shakes when you cry. All of it carries the signature of that first singer. So sing gently, listen often, and remember, even when the song fades, it waits in the silence between heartbeats. But even the song fades at the edge of the sea. Have you ever stood where the land meets the sea and felt the pulse beneath your feet? Have you watched the tide roll in, as if the ocean itself breathes memory? Have you wondered what stories lie beneath those waves, hidden footprints, whispered names, and songs carried far beyond the shore? The sea is not empty. It is a vast keep of ancient things it remembers. Long ago, before the world knew sky or stone, before rivers knew their own paths, before fire danced upon the earth, there was only the endless ocean. It stretched wide, deep, and dark, holding secrets in its arms. The people lived beside it, but did not yet understand it. The waves sang a language older than breath, but it was a language not spoken, only felt. The ocean's voice was in the rhythm of tides, the crash of foam, the sigh of salt on the wind. It was a living spirit, wide and restless. Among those who listened closely was a child named Nerline. Her name meant footprint in water. She was born where the river bowed into the sea, where fresh met salt and sky met water. Ngullin was quiet, with eyes like the deep pools carved by waves. She felt the ocean's heart before she knew her own. One day, as the sun slipped low, Ngullin followed the waterline. The sand beneath her feet was soft and wet, shimmering like glass. She noticed something strange. Footprints. Not her own. They were larger, deeper, pressed into the sand in shapes she did not.
No, she bent close and traced them with a trembling finger. Her breath caught. These footprints were not just marks, they were stories. pressed into the earth and held fast against
the pull of the tide. Garlin walked along them, step by step, feeling the echo of each one beneath her skin. The footprints led to a cave hidden behind curtains of hanging vines, a place where the land curved inwards, swallowing light. Inside, the air was cool and thick with silence, and Garlin's footsteps were swallowed by shadows. But as she moved deeper, the darkness stirred. A voice rose, not loud, not sharp, but deep and steady, like the hum of a distant drum. Who walks the path where no path should be? Garlin whispered, "It is I, child of land and sea." From the shadows emerged a figure, not fully man,
not fully bird. It was Bunjil,
the great eagle spirit who watched from the skies and shaped the land below. He carried the ocean in his eyes and the wind in his wings. He spoke slowly, with weight. "Long ago, when the world was young, I walked these shores. I made the waves rise and fall, taught the tides their ancient song. The ocean remembers every step I took. It remembers footprints that no tide can wash away." Garlin listened,
heart steady. Bunjil stretched his great wings.
casting shadows like mountains on the cave walls. He said, "There was a time when the sea was fierce and wild. It took much and gave little, but the ocean is a keeper of balance, and balance is a song sung between earth and water." He gestured toward the cave's mouth where the sky stretched wide and blue. There, a child was lost once.
"A girl like you."
She stepped too far into the sea's embrace and was carried beneath the waves. But the ocean did not keep her. It sang her back. Garlin's breath caught. Bunjil smiled gently. She followed a songline through the water, an invisible path woven by the voices of fish, the dance of currents, and the pulse of the moon. It led her to the heart of the sea, where water remembers all beginnings. The child in the story was not lost. She became part of the ocean's memory. Her footprints, pressed deep into the sand, were not washed away but carried forward. "You too walk between land and sea," Bunjil said. "Your footprints will be remembered. Long after the tide forgets the shore." Garlin felt the ocean's pulse quicken beneath her feet. She stepped outside the cave into the golden light of sunset. The waves kissed the shore softly, as if greeting an old friend. She bent to touch the water. It was cool and full of stories. The wind carried salt and whispers, and as the tide rose, it brought with it a quiet song, a song of footprints remembered, of balance kept, of a world held together by breath. Water and time. Have you ever felt the ocean's memory rise inside your own chest? The sea is never still. It carries all footprints, visible and unseen. It holds the stories of those who came before, and it waits patiently to sing them again. And still, deeper than the sea is the cave where time itself breathes. Have you ever stood before a cave so ancient, so deep, that its silence feels like a living thing? Have you heard the breath of time itself pulse in the shadows, slow and steady like a heart forgotten by the world? Have you wondered what voices sleep beneath the stone waiting to awaken? They say there is a place where the earth remembers all its stories, where past and present fold like layers of mist, where the veil between here and beyond thins to a whisper. This place is the Whispering Cave, hidden deep in the red heart of the land, where sandstone cliffs rise like old gods, and the wind carves secrets into the rock. The elders say the cave was carved not by water, but by breath, the breath of the Dreamtime itself. They say when you enter, Your own breath becomes part of the cave's song. Long ago, before even the rainbow serpent had finished dreaming the world, before fire touched earth, before canoes sailed the sky, there was only the cave. Not a cave as we know it, but a womb of stone. Dark and vast, inside it slept the breath of time. Slow, endless, watching. One evening,
A woman named
Kira came to the cave. Her name meant quiet spirit, for she spoke little and listened much. Kira carried a burden not seen but felt, a sorrow that hummed beneath her skin. She walked into the cave alone, her footsteps soft as falling feathers inside. The air was cool and thick with waiting. She closed her eyes and breathed deeply. Her breath mingled with the cave's, joining the ancient rhythm. She heard a voice, not loud,
not harsh, but a hush, a murmur. It said,
"You carry what is forgotten." Kira's heart tightened. She asked, "What is forgotten?" The cave replied, "The stories that shape you, the memories you hide, the names lost to shadow." Kira's breath caught. She thought of her people, their songs fading, their stories slipping like sand through fingers. She thought of the land,
scarred and silent in places where once there was song. She knew she was not the only one who had
forgotten. The cave's walls seemed to pulse. It showed her visions, echoes of ancient dances, flames long cold,
rivers that no longer sang. It whispered of the past,
but also of the future, of a time when the world would wake again. Kira opened her eyes and felt the cave's breath inside her. She understood that memory is not only kept in words, but in breath, in silence, in stone. She sat and began to sing, not loudly, but softly. A song older than sorrow, a song that held light within darkness. Her voice wove through the cave's chambers. It stirred the dust. It ruffled the shadows. The cave answered,
humming with life. Kira's
song became a bridge between what was lost and what can be found. Between the silence and the sound, she sang of the rainbow, serpents slow turning, of Yarindi's fire gifted, from the moon, of Murky's canoes sailing the stars, of the dream singers,
melodies carried by animals, of the ocean that remembers.
Footprints. The cave held each note like a sacred stone, and as her voice faded, Kira felt the breath of time rise within her. She rose and stepped out into the night. The stars above shimmered with new light. The land beneath her feet seemed to breathe too. She knew that memory was alive, not trapped, but flowing, not buried, but waiting. Waiting for voices like hers to sing it back. Have you ever held a breath so long it felt like holding the world? That is the gift of the Whispering Cave. It teaches that even silence is alive. Even forgetting is part of remembering. And in the deep dark, where shadows sleep, the breath of time whispers still. And beyond the cave, beneath the endless sky, the next story waits to be told. Have you ever looked up at the stars and felt, just for a moment, that they were not so far away, that something, someone, might still be traveling among them? That high above the world, a canoe sails slow across the sky, carrying stories too ancient for words. They say it moves with the
hush of night,
that its paddles make no sound, only ripples in memory, and that if you are quiet enough, still enough, you can hear the echo of its last song. Long ago, before the world had its shape, and long after it had its name, the Sky Canoe returned, not with fire this time, nor with warning, but with remembrance. This is the story of Waru, the last sky traveller. Waru was born beneath a silver tree where the bark shimmered like moonlight and the wind spoke in riddles. His people said he had a different look in his eyes, as if he were always watching something far away. He listened more than he spoke, and when he did speak, it was always of the stars. He would sit for hours, tracing their paths with his fingers, whispering to them as if they were kin. One night, while the elders sat by the fire and told tales of dreamtime spirits, Waru wandered away. He followed a rhythm in his chest, a thrum that did not match his heartbeat, but something older. It led him to the sea. There, gliding just above the waves, was a canoe made of starlight and smoke. Its sides shimmered with constellations, and its prow pointed to a place between the worlds. He stepped in without fear. The moment his feet touched the canoe, the sea became the sky. The stars turned beneath him. He was no longer looking up. He was among them, and so began Waru's journey. The canoe did not need steering. It moved through memory, through light, through silence. It showed him the rivers before they dried, the forests before they burned. It whispered of beings that once walked beside people, fire spirits, feathered serpents, night singers, moon walkers. He saw the dream time stretched like a great net.
Over all things, threads glowing, fading, then glowing again.
He saw that time was not a straight path, but a weaving, and every person, every story was a knot in that great design. Waru listened. He did not speak. The canoe carried him to the edge of the world, not the world of maps, but the world of meaning. There he met the Old One. She wore a cloak of ash and sky feathers. Her eyes held no whites, only reflections of water, fire, mist, and wind. She did not ask his name. She simply looked at him and said, "The canoe does not carry you. It remembers you." He did not understand, not fully, but he bowed his head. She opened her hand and offered him a seed, small, dark, pulsing with light. "Plant this where the sky meets the breath of the land," she whispered, "and the story will begin again." Waru returned, but not in the same way. The canoe brought him down in the place where the red earth kisses the ocean's edge. He stepped out as the first light touched the horizon. He did not speak. Instead, he knelt. He dug his fingers into the earth, deep, slow, reverent. He placed the seed in the hollow, and he sang. Not a song he had been taught, a song that rose from the canoe, from the stars, from the breath of the Old One. The seed pulsed, roots unfurled, light rose from the soil like smoke, like memory, like song. A tree grew there, not a tree of leaves, but of stone, sky, and shadow. Its branches reached upward, as if trying to remember where it came from, and its roots curled downward, as if trying to hold the earth in place. The people gathered. They saw the tree. They heard the song still humming in the air, long after Waru had walked into the mist. They say he became part of the tree, or perhaps he became the wind in its leaves, or perhaps he simply became memory. But still, when night falls, they look up. They trace the sky canoe among the stars. They listen for the song beneath silence, and they remember that stories do not end. They only breathe. They only wait, and somewhere, above or below, the canoe still travels, singing softly, always, always returning. And if you find yourself walking beneath the stars and the night seems to shimmer just so, pause, listen. It may be that Waru is passing overhead, that the Sky Canoe is tracing a new path, that your story, too, is being woven into the dreaming. For the myths are not only old, they are eternal. They do not fade, they breathe. And when we are quiet, when we are gentle, when we remember, they return. They always return, just like the stars, just like breath, just like love. And so the stories fall silent again, not ending, but resting. The Sky Canoe sails on, and the wind carries its hush. Far beyond the hills, deep beneath the skin of time, into the sleep that remembers.